Good evening. I am Sophie Lagacé, and I will be leading the meeting in the absence of the chair and the vice chair. Tonight, I'd like to acknowledge Irene O'Connell, who's the liaison to the Planning Commission for the City Council. And this is a special meeting for very pressing business, as I understand it. We should start with the roll call. Where's the minutes? Yep.
Chair Chase is not here yet this evening, and neither is Commissioner Vice Chair Rick Biasotti. But the next person on our list here is Commissioner Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Lagasse.
Present.
Commissioner Lathine.
Present.
Commissioner Mason.
Present.
Great, thank you.
Then we'll pledge the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes for the...
There's none tonight.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Then the second item is communications. Do we have any items that need to be imparted at this point?
Commissioner Lagasse, we have no additional communications this evening. I would like to point out, though, that on the agenda, we would suggest to staff that you reorganize when you come to public hearings, item 5. And if you would please reorganize to move 5B, to take 5B first, and then we'll take 5A second, please. Thank you.
Understood. All right. Then we will move to item 3. Public comments on items not on the agenda. People are allowed 3 minutes to speak on topics that are not otherwise agendized. And groups in attendance can get 5 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak tonight on any topic not on the agenda? All right, so item number 4, announcement of conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest on the Planning Commission?
So through the chair, I recommend that you defer this item until the beginning of item number 5A, which we're taking out of order.
Okay,
Just take it at that point, if you don't mind.
very good.
Thanks.
Then public hearing, item 5B. We'll start with item 5B. So I got to have the current. Oh, okay, this is 5A. Item 5B is the capital improvement program budget. We have a recommendation for an environmental determination from staff. It is not applicable. This is not a project under CEQA. And the request for adoption of a resolution confirming the review of the 2018-2023 5-year capital improvement program and fiscal year 2018-19 capital improvement program budget and its conformance with the San Bruno general plan pursuant to California Government Code section. She's hiding it from me.
I'm sorry.
65401. I
Commissioner
believe staff
Lagasse.
has a report to present.
Yes, we have a report to present on this item. As we do each time this year before our City Council goes forward and considers the CIP budget, we bring new proposed CIP projects to the Planning Commission for review, focusing on conformance with our general plan. In the packet you received, you probably noticed that we have 5 new projects being proposed to go forward to our City Council. expect that those will go forward as they consider the CIP budget later on this month of June. What I'd like to do is just briefly go over, describe the projects, the 5 new projects for you. In the staff report that's in your packet, we've indicated for each one of the items how we've researched and determined that each one of these proposed projects we believe does conform with the general plan, and we've cited specific policy or program statements from the general plan for your review. And we've attached a resolution to your staff report with our overall recommendation to find these projects in conformance with our general plan. So let me go through the projects for you briefly at this point. The first project is titled the Spyglass Drive Storm Drain Improvements Project. This project will be designed to mitigate the flooding issues during intense storm events. The proposed project will install a new 48-inch diameter pipeline from the drain inlet to a new manhole. A new 36-inch pipeline will be installed from the new manhole to the end of Spyglass Drive and connecting to the existing storm drain. So essentially that is the project as indicated in our staff report in terms of applicable general plan goals and policies. There's a health and safety policy referring to protecting sites subject to flooding hazards by implementing storm drainage improvements and by requiring building design and engineering that meets or exceeds known flood risk requirements. So we find that this proposed project will meet one of our goals in our general plan, and again, we'll be recommending that you find this in conformance with the general plan. The specifics of these projects in terms of the details, the cost and financing, those aspects will be considered by the City Council. Your focus on all of these is general plan conformance. The next project is under Parks and Facilities Capital, and this is the replacement of Fire Station 52. Fire Station 52 serves as San Bruno's second fire station, providing emergency response coverage to the surrounding Crestmore neighborhood and the western half of our city, as well as providing housing for on-duty officers, trucks, and other fire equipment. The city has identified replacement of Fire Station number 52 as a key project to continue to provide effective emergency response to these areas. Fire Station number 52 was constructed in the mid-1950s and needs extensive repairs, including seismic retrofit and roof replacement. The new proposed Fire Station number 52 will remain at its current location, the current location of the facility, and be designed to serve the community in that particular area of our community. We've indicated in the staff report a number of applicable plan goals and policies. They are in your staff report. I will not go through them in detail. If you have any questions regarding them, please ask me. But essentially, these goals and policies talk about promoting projects that serve the public health and safety of our community. The next project is titled Police Facility Improvements. This project will install a heating and cooling system at the police station here in our community. The current system is rusted out, can no longer draw in sufficient air to cool the building. The project will include replacement of the HVAC coil units and related systems. Again, in terms of general plan policies and goals, they're stated in your staff report. And basically, this project would help provide for the support of police protection and fire suppression and general emergency services within our community. So we do recommend that you find this in conformance with our general plan. The next subject area is library facility improvements. This project will replace the HVAC system and generator at the San Bruno Library. 2 of the 3 HVAC heating and cooling systems at the library for the basement and the children's areas no longer function efficiently and are incurring expensive energy bills. Replacement parts are no longer available due to the age of these systems. The generator that serves the library is 60 years old and is no longer functioning. Again, there are applicable general plan goals and policies in your staff report. The next project is titled Public Works Corporation Yard Facility Improvements. This project will evaluate solutions for providing additional parking spaces for staff along Huntington Avenue. The Public Works Corporation Yard currently has insufficient parking on site for staff who must rely on on-street parking. There is concern about congestion and demand for parking in this area, and the proposed project would look at ways to increase the number of parking spaces available for staff at this city facility. Again, goals and policies are in your staff report, and they include providing convenient and effective access to city administration, including visitor parking, open meetings, technical assistance. Those are the 5 new projects being proposed and will go forward to our city council. Again, the staff report describes them in a little bit more detail and provides more detail on the general plan goals, guiding policies, and implementing policies that we believe would support finding these projects in conformance with our general plan. We've attached a staff report, we've attached to the staff report a resolution number 2018-02, that is for your use this evening for finding these projects in conformance with our general plan. I'd be happy to respond to any of your questions. Thank you.
At this point, would it be acceptable to add Commissioner Chase to the roster?
Yes.
The roll call?
In terms of roll call, Chair Chase. Thank you.
So, are there questions for the staff?
Through the chair. I just wanted to ask, are all of the facilities here owned by the city and county of San Bruno, or city of San Bruno?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? It was a very good report.
Thank you. You may check with the public to see if
Yes,
there are any public
sir.
comments as well, please.
But forgive me, because it's the first time I chair. I was wondering if it would be appropriate for me to pass the gavel to
I think it would be appropriate, and Chair Chase could then continue guiding the meeting tonight. But Commissioner Legacy, thank you very much for stepping in and giving us the guidance to start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Okay, we're open to public comment. Anybody from the public wishing to make any comments on any of these items here that we just discussed tonight? No? Okay. Close public hearing. And I will now bring it back to commissioners. One question before I do that. As far as the resolution is concerned, I assume it's going to be a roll call vote.
Yes.
It'll be a roll call. Yes, please.
So, do we need to read it, or do we need to just have a motion?
A motion would be sufficient. Thank you.
So I would entertain a motion from any
Oh,
of the...
through the chair, I just have a question. As a, this is our first capital plan that's come to us since some of us were appointed. How does the planning department determine which items they're going to prioritize and how that's going to fit into, well, the general plan's obviously already written out, but how do they determine within the general plan which items to prioritize?
The Community Development Department doesn't specifically do that. The city manager, along with the department head staff, evaluates the overall program of the city council to determine what projects may be ready to move forward and are at a point to forward council priorities. And as the various departments do that, they put together a proposed CIP budget. So this budget was put together by a range of departments, as you see here. Public Works, police, other departments are involved in putting together the CIP proposed budget. At this point, you're again looking at these proposed projects in terms of conformity with the general plan. Later this month, we'll be submitting a proposed budget, both an operating budget and a capital improvement budget, to the City Council for consideration. It'll be the council that will decide whether or not to move forward with these proposed projects. But these 5 projects that we have before you tonight, as staff, we're recommending that the City Council include these in their CIP approved budget that they'll be looking at later on this month. Ultimately, it'll be up to the City Council to decide whether or not to approve these projects to move forward with implementation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of staff before I again ask if any of the commissioners would like to make a motion on this?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 2018-02 for the capital improvement budget 2018-2023 5-year capital improvement plan.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. A roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Mason,
Yes.
Commissioner Lethin,
Aye.
Commissioner Legacy,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Chase.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, well, that resolution will now get passed on to City Council, correct? There is no 10-day appeal period on this one.
No, there is not.
No, there isn't.
There is not. We had discussed, Chair Chase, perhaps before you arrived, that there was going to be a reorganization of the agenda. You may have heard that. So the next item, we've actually taken item 5B first. We're going to go back to item 5A. And as we move to that item, there would be a request for you to ask if any of the commissioners have a potential conflict of interest on this item, 5A, and if they would be requesting to recuse themselves from consideration of this item.
Okay, very good. Well, staff report, please, to begin with.
Well, so, I'm sorry.
I did want to say before the
report.
staff
Oh, do I have
report.
to ask that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just need to ask the commissioners if there's.
Does anybody need to be recused?
Well, so my husband is actually on the school board, and so for purposes of public transparency, I did want to ask council if there are any conflicts, any legal or financial conflicts.
So I've not been made aware of any financial conflict of interest as a result of your husband serving on the school board and you serving on the planning commission on this issue.
Okay, and now that we do have a quorum for the public record, I would feel more comfortable recusing myself, so I will be stepping out. Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. Okey dokey. Staff report, please. Michael, oh yeah, I know.
Good evening, Commissioners. Michael Smith, Planning Department staff. The project before you is a review for conformance with the San Bruno General Plan of the disposition of 3 properties owned by the San Bruno Park School District pursuant to Educational Code Section 17464 and Government Code Section 54220. This review is not an action related to the actual sale or development of the properties in question. The properties in question are located at 500 Acacia Avenue. This is a district office site. 201 Balboa Way, which is the El Cristal Elementary School site, and 2500 Cottonwood Drive, which is the Rollingwood Elementary School site. All 3 of the properties are located in the R1 district, which permits single-family housing. And the general plan designation for all of the properties is low-density residential, which allows 2.1 to 8 units per acre. Permitted uses in the R1 zoning district include, as I said, single-family dwellings, small and large family daycare, special residential care facilities, and transitional and supportive housing. Conditionally permitted uses within the R1 district include schools and churches, parks and playgrounds, large family daycare, as I said before, and mobile home parks, crop and tree farming facilities. Staff has reviewed the general plan and found several policies that support the disposition of excess school properties. Well, I won't mention them all here, but there are a few highlights that cover the development potential of these three properties. Within the land use and urban design element of the general plan, we have land use policy number 1, which is to promote development of single-family housing on former school sites owned by public school districts, retain existing recreation facilities for residents' use whenever possible. From the open space and recreation element of the general plan, we have policy number 4, undertake a program to add 20 acres of parkland to the city system over the next 20 years. Seize opportunities to develop and or maintain parks and recreation facilities within existing residential neighborhoods through acquisition or preservation of former school facilities. And lastly, from the public facilities and services element of the general plan, we have policy 52. Provide technical assistance to local school districts in design and planning for reuse of former school sites throughout the city. Consider acquisition of or leasing of former school sites for recreation, education, or community needs. It is important to recognize that none of the uses that I've just mentioned, that there's no particular guarantee, and none of them are anticipated at this time. The sale of these surplus school sites would simply provide opportunities for housing development on the sites, as mentioned in the general plan, and that would help San Bruno meet its regional housing needs. The sites could also be, as I said before, developed as open space for San Bruno residents and or be developed for recreation, education, and other community needs. Staff is asking the Planning Commission to adopt the attached resolution, which you have before you. I have submitted a revised resolution at the dais, and there in yellow is highlighted what the changes were from the one you had previously received. And so that revised one is what we're asking you to adopt today. And that would then find the sale of these properties in conformance with the general plan as required by the educational code. And this concludes my staff presentation. I'm available for any questions or comments.
Commissioners, have any, excuse me, have any questions of staff? Excuse me, Michael, I do. So how does one determine whether it's going to be a surplus school site or not? I mean, do we not still have children that are growing up? I mean, I know what they did at Parkside, they kind of, pushed grades together, but.
Chair Chase, we do have representatives from the school district here tonight, so I think that question should be posed to the representatives from the school district. They'll be happy to answer your question, I'm sure.
Good evening. Stella Kemp, Superintendent, San Bruno Park School District. So this past fall, as part of our fiscal restructuring and school district reorganization, the district Board of Trustees directed me to convene a 7-Eleven committee whose purpose was to identify properties which would be declared surplus. This came out of an analysis of our existing schools and the occupancy rate of our schools, which was right around 60%. And the district, in order to get its financial house in order, made a decision that they needed to increase the enrollment at the remaining schools, which we are reducing 6 elementaries to 4 eventually when the project is finished. Increase the enrollment. That would allow for us then to have schools between 450 and 600 students at each of the elementary schools. Coupled with that recommendation out of the 7-Eleven committee was a recommendation not to lease the sites, but rather to surplus them and put them on the market. The reason for this is because the district is pursuing a modernization plan for our schools to bring our schools up to code, because they are out of code in terms of safety and ADA accessibility, to allow us to modernize the schools to meet the needs of the 22nd century learner and make them schools with tomorrow in sight. So we want to get our schools ready for our next generation of students that will be coming to us and be able to provide them with the high quality education that every child deserves.
I have another question, if you don't mind. So, in that regards, as far as getting more students at one particular school, increasing the enrollment, ultimately getting, what did you say it was again, 400 to 600
400
students?
to 600 students, yes.
So how does that affect the classroom size as far as?
The classroom sizes won't change. We have negotiated agreements with our Teachers Association regarding class size, and we're actually looking to eventually reduce class size, so it'll be more classrooms. We're intending to have at least 18 classrooms on a school site, plus specialty classrooms for STEM, STEAM, music, special education. And so we're looking at taking our existing facilities. You'll notice that, or you may not know, but some of our schools are very large. They're on 10 acres. And so our intent is to extend those campuses, reconfigure the campuses to add the additional classrooms, and to address the traffic issues that we have around our schools and parking issues.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? No? Okay, well, at this point then I think I will open it up to the public comment. If anybody would like to go to the podium there and ask any questions of school board or whomever, please go. Hurry. Okay, closed. And bringing it back here to commissioners for, I guess I'll entertain a motion if that were the case, unless there's other questions.
Through the chair,
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
wanted just to give some feedback. I attended various community meetings regarding the closure of the sites, identifying them, and listened intensely to public comment. The committee did an extremely thorough and good job on identifying, looking very carefully why school should or should not close. And through that process, it was definitely a difficult and painful process and a hard decision, but it was the right decision. And I really trust that the school board will do the right thing. And I really, at being at those meetings, I just wanted to basically convey and that I did get to see some of the process. And Dr. Campbell just was exquisite in handling the audience and fully amazingly intelligent and brilliant in how she led the meetings and brought people to being heard and understood at both sides. And so I just wanted to, since you asked the question, just that there was a tremendous amount of planning and thinking through this process. And when they came out to this decision, and it was not an easy decision. It's been going on for years, a variety of different decisions for different sites. But this one, it came to the end of making these decisions, and as I said, it was difficult, but very well done. So,
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a clarification. It seems as though, I want to clarify, we're not necessarily here to discuss the school board's rationale for selecting these properties, but rather deciding whether or not the sale of the properties is in conformance with the general plan. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is absolutely correct. So your focus really is general plan conformity in terms of the sale or disposition of these three properties. Yes, thank you.
And further, a number of the goals and policies that were cited, whatever comes to be in the future, whether they're sold and to whom,
Yes.
whoever the purchasing party would still have to comply with the policies and goals of the general plan, and it will, I'm assuming, go through different, if there were development, it would be coming back through the Planning Commission and involving the community in these decisions?
Yes, and to clarify, as Michael Smith indicated, our senior planner, at this point we're focusing only on the sale or disposition. We do not know the specific future use. When the properties are sold and there's a proposed use or development plan, the applicant, the purchaser of the property, would come back through the city and present that project, and it would go through a full review. And again, depending on the nature of the project, you, as a planning commission and the city, would be reviewing the project for conformance with our general plan, again, more specifically, and any other related codes or requirements of the city of San Bruno.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or clarifications?
If there are none, I move that the Planning Commission adopt resolution APN 020-253050 and APN 020-351-430 and APN 017-190-210.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Just to correct, I believe the resolution is 2018-01.
Thank you.
That is correct. Yes.
Oh, you're correct. Because we changed the A and B, I just picked up the wrong one. So
We
thank you
apologize for
clarifying
that.
And there were all the three properties, so thank you for clarifying that, Commissioner.
And I will
Thank
second.
you. That's right. Well, right by
Would you
me,
want
too.
me to read that over again for clarification?
Unnecessary. Thank
Okay.
you, though. So
We're
we have a
still waiting
motion
on
and
a
a
second.
second, correct, Chair?
Pardon me?
We have a motion and a second,
Oh, we
correct?
do have a second. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that too. Whew, wow, what a night. All right, we have a motion and a second. Let us go for the roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Lethane,
Aye.
Commissioner Legacy,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Chase.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Next item would be city staff discussion. Oh, are we going to bring Linda back in? Oh, I like that better, yeah. Mood lighting. Thank you. Okay. Here we go.
Chair Chase and Planning Commissioners,
Thank you.
in recent months, the Planning Commissioners have indicated an interest in hearing a presentation about our downtown, the San Bruno downtown and the TCP area in general. And I had the opportunity to go to an international conference in Ottawa, Canada recently, May 14th through May 18th. And in past months, I had talked to a colleague of mine who is an urban designer, a transportation planner, and who worked on the Caltrain grade separation project and the Caltrain station project. His name is Rick Phillips. Rick and I collaborated. We worked over several months, actually, to put together a presentation, and we presented a paper in Ottawa, Canada, at the 55th International Making Cities Livable Conference. This is a group, IMCL, that I've been affiliated with for many years, actually. When I was first a planning director for the town of Windsor in Sonoma County many years ago in the 1990s, I became familiar with IMCL and purchased books and image sets and used their information to work with the town of Windsor to develop a downtown plan, a town green plan, that's now been built and implemented and used and enjoyed. IMCL was founded in 1985 by a husband and wife, by a couple who enjoyed traveling throughout Europe and focusing on squares, really looking at how do people come together and why do they come together. And Mr. and Mrs. Leonard focused on squares primarily, but they also looked at what makes a city livable. And he was a behavioral scientist, a psychologist, and Suzanne is a PhD architect. And they wrote several books about squares, and then they brought together a whole group of people, a board of elected officials, architects, urbanists from around the world. They've had 55 conferences, and I've been fortunate to go to 4 of them and present at 3 of them. At this recent conference, the title and theme of the conference was Healthy 10-Minute Neighborhoods. I've given you all a booklet that Suzanne Crowhurst-Leonard put together describing what is a healthy 10-minute neighborhood. When Rick and I heard about the theme of the conference, we thought about the TCP, and we thought about what we're doing here in San Bruno to create a healthy 10-minute neighborhood. A healthy 10-minute neighborhood really is a neighborhood where people live, they work, they recreate, they shop, and they can do all of that within, say, a 10-minute walk or bike ride. It's a neighborhood or area that is accessible to transit, employment, etc. It's a complete neighborhood. And we're on a journey to create such a neighborhood. So I was very, very excited to have the opportunity to work with Rick and present this in Ottawa, Canada. Again, when IMCL talks about livable cities, it's human scale, it's compact, it's livable for children, maybe the most vulnerable in our society. It's an area that's about improving the quality of life for all people, bringing together all people, creating opportunities for frequent interactions, creating community. Public spaces are extremely important in terms of IMCL's putting together a community. At the Ottawa conference, there were about 350 architects, planners, elected officials, urbanists, practitioners like all of us from around the world. There were people from 25 different countries, from Switzerland and Indonesia, from Canada, of course, and the United States, from Guatemala, from Russia, from a variety of countries. And people like myself were able to share their work on what are they doing to create healthy 10-minute neighborhoods. So I found it extremely interesting. We shared a lot. I was able to share the work we're doing here in San Bruno. So when they talk about healthy 10-minute neighborhoods, what's the basis for that? The basis for that is true urbanism. And when we talk about true urbanism, looking at it from an IMCL perspective, it's building cities, building communities that facilitate community social life, really bringing people together, creating opportunities for frequent interaction of people, like Community Day, like we had on Sunday here in San Bruno, where we had people, all people from our community come together, interact, and meet. That's very much about facilitating community social life, having places like that and programming places like Community Day and the Posey Parade. It's also about facilitating contact with nature, green streets, green infrastructure, having parks. In our community, we've been working with the park up at Glenview and Crestmore. We've also been working with the Florida Park. We also expect in our downtown and our TCP area to be doing a streetscape plan to bring greenery and green infrastructure downtown. True urbanism is also about facilitating independent mobility, not moving cars, but moving people. And moving people by providing for opportunities to walk and bike and have access to transit. We're doing a good job at that. We've adopted a walk and bike plan. We've gotten a grant recently for a protected bike lane on Huntington in our downtown area, in our TCP area. And we're one of 4 communities that have both a Caltrain station and a BART station in our downtown. So in terms of true urbanism, San Bruno is facilitating independent mobility, moving people rather than cars. It's also about ensuring a healthy urban fabric. And when I say healthy urban fabric, that's about mixed use. It's not about separated land uses. It's about mixing land uses so that people can walk to employment from where they live. They can walk to shopping. They can walk or bike to transit. We're doing that. So again, this idea of a healthy 10-minute neighborhood is very much about forwarding the principles of true urbanism, facilitating community social life, facilitating contact with nature, facilitating independent mobility, and ensuring a healthy fabric. We're doing that with our transit corridors plan. Rick and I had the opportunity to familiarize people at this conference, again, 350 or so people at the conference, and there were over 50 papers presented, by the way. And so it was really interesting, I think, for all of us. But we got the opportunity to familiarize these people with our community, with San Bruno, and where we are. We were in Ottawa, Canada, 2,400 miles away, but we got to speak to them about our community, San Bruno, here on the San Francisco Peninsula, and talk about our community, San Bruno, being incorporated in 1914. We're over 100 years old at this point, near San Francisco, about 5.5 square miles, population of 43,000. A diverse population. We emphasize that in the paper that I gave you and in our presentation. As a community, we're very proud of our diversity, and it makes us somewhat unique in this way. So we shared our location, our population, our diversity, and our history with the participants at the conference. We also shared what is our vision, what is San Bruno's vision for urban livability. Again, remember the theme of the conference, and the theme really and mission of IMCL is creating compact, mixed-use areas, linking jobs and housing with nearby transit, creating vibrant, walkable, bicycle-friendly places to gather. Again, social interaction, frequent contacts, building community is very much a part of the IMCL vision, and creating healthy 10-minute neighborhoods. It's also about creating inclusive neighborhoods and communities, economically, socially, and culturally inclusive and diverse. I think many of you, probably all of you, recall an article that was in the San Francisco Chronicle not that long ago, talking about our downtown, San Bruno's downtown. And it's healthy, diverse, economically, socially, culturally diverse downtown with its shops and restaurants representing so many different ethnicities. We've got Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and on and on and on. Just a wonderful diversity, making our downtown unique and special in its own way. Another concept of working with IMCL is really looking at your community's roots. What are your roots? What are your community's roots? And building on those roots, building on those unique and special roots. So We shared images of San Bruno. We shared our vision for urban livability consistent with the theme of the conference. We talked about our history. We're a community that really is based on the railroad. We're a corridor city. There are significant rail connections to San Bruno and the broader area. And San Bruno has a history of being a railroad city, a peninsula, San Francisco Peninsula railroad city. We've got Caltrain, we've got BART. You can take Caltrain south to Gilroy and connect further to the Central Valley and beyond through the United States. You can take BART throughout the wider Bay Area. This is part of our history, part of San Bruno's history. A streetcar city, Southern Pacific, Caltrain. We have a deep history associated with rail. And today, we've got a BART station, San Bruno BART station, opened in 2003. We've got our Caltrain station that opened in 2014. The Caltrain station has its elevator towers, very iconic, very contemporary look in our downtown, kind of anchoring our northern downtown area. Let's talk a little bit about our San Bruno station, our Caltrain station. It really creates a gateway, an urban design gateway to our downtown. It anchors the transit corridors plan that we're now familiar with, that was adopted in 2013. Why do we have the Caltrain station where it is now? As many of you know, probably most or all of you know, we had a situation here where we had San Mateo Avenue crossing at an angle, crossing the rail corridor. It was very dangerous, and it was very helpful to this community to have a grade separation project and a new Caltrain station that separated the vehicles from the rail, making a more safe condition. Work on the Caltrain station itself began in about 2004, and as I mentioned, the station opened in 2014 and really became a cornerstone, a base for the sort of vision for a mixed-use, transit-oriented environment in our downtown as expressed in the Transit Corridors Plan. This is an image that kind of shows the downtown and surrounding area. Again, San Bruno BART station, Caltrain station, our central business district. We're linked to transit. We're creating opportunities for people to have convenient access to transit from our downtown. This is an image, an aerial image looking down at San Mateo Avenue, as you can see, kind of going at an angle, and the rail corridor. And you can see the angle and the dangerous, essentially dangerous circumstance created by San Mateo Avenue cutting across the rail corridor. And then, as the project moved forward and was approved, the Caltrain station and grade separation, there was an opportunity to not only separate the trains from vehicles, there was opportunity to create an urban design statement, to look at our downtown, to look at an opportunity to help create an urban plaza. And our Posey Park, as many of you are familiar with, was transformed through this project to a Posey Plaza. And this is an image kind of showing the grade separation, Posey Plaza as we know it today, and really an anchor to our northern gateway into our downtown. Another image just showing some of the improvements in the area. And then some of the, I'll refer to them as iconic elements or features that were considered, and actually many of them have now been constructed with the grade separation Caltrain station project. Again, the elevator towers are shown here in this image. The new Posey Plaza. And as we start to move forward and think about the downtown and activating the downtown, as I talked to Rick Phillips, who worked on the Caltrain station project, we talked about really creating eyes on Posey Plaza. I think one of the issues that we have maybe at this time is that the space needs to be programmed more. There needs to be more activity so that it's not a place where it's not observed and it's used maybe more by transients than the wider population. But to activate the space, program the space. And Rick was mentioning to me that in terms of some of the work that he was involved with earlier on the Caltrain station project and the grade separation, there was actually built into the wall, into the project itself, the opportunity in the future perhaps to do small retail outlets, to create opportunities for small businesses to open up. If some of you have been to San Pedro Plaza in San Jose, you may have noticed that across from the plaza there is a large parking structure on ground level, the ground level. They've converted some of the parking spaces to small incubator retail shops that activates the street and kind of mimics like versus like. You have the retail shops across the street at San Pedro Plaza, and now if you go to San Jose and you look at the parking structure that once was pretty desolate and without activity, now there are small shops, little cafes and food shops where before there were just cars and no activity. It's really activated the space. So there's a potential here as we look at our streetscape plan in the future and look at activating Posey Plaza and the downtown, as we look at the project that will be coming to you for 111 San Bruno Avenue, which is where the former First National Bank was across the street. It's down, moving forward slowly but surely. But as we look at that property and activate it and then do something at Posey Plaza to activate it as shown here in some of the images, to create that synergy and activity and program the space, we can really create something pretty interesting and pretty dynamic. And then, of course, other images that were discussed during the development of the Caltrain station was to look at gateway features, entry features. And I think the community will have an opportunity again with the streetscape plan to again look at what might be the appropriate gateway feature or features, not only at the northern end coming from Highway 101 into our community and then into our downtown from the north to the south, but also to look at El Camino Real at San Mateo Avenue and what might the gateway feature be there to kind of announce you're coming into downtown, San Mateo Avenue. So I would fully imagine that as a part of the streetscape plan, we would not only look at Posey Plaza and kind of what's the next iteration of design for Posey Plaza and to activate it, but we would also look at what should be the gateway features to announce entry to our downtown. So Rick and I worked together and he focused quite a bit in his work on, we shared this presentation on the history of trains in this community and the development of the grade separation and Caltrain project. And I kind of picked it up and moved it forward in terms of the TCP, the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan. So it's pretty clear that in terms of creating this mixed-use, transit-accessible, bicycle-friendly, pedestrian-friendly environment with places to gather and meet and have those interactions, that the Caltrain station and BART station provide a great foundation for us. But then in 2013, we, the City Council, moved forward and adopted the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan. And as you think about the TCP, the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan, you need to think about what's the history, the base, the foundations. How did we get there? The work on the TCP started in about 2009, was completed and adopted in 2013, and now we're in implementation. We have the implementation action plan. As you've looked at the TCP, you know full well, it's a long-range plan. It's a vision. It doesn't happen overnight. It's 20 years. It's 30, 40 years. There's a detailed action plan, implementation action plan at the back of the TCP. And we're in the process of realizing that vision. And we're making good progress. But let's go back. So in terms of San Bruno's key policy guide for urban livability in the downtown, it's the TCP. But what influenced the TCP? Certainly the work that was done on the Caltrain station project, the grade separation. Yes, there was a dangerous circumstance and it had to be addressed, and the grade separation addressed that. But with that, as I described already, there were a lot of urban design elements that went with that to help create the foundation for a very active and transformed downtown with the Caltrain station and Posey Plaza project. We also have the Grand Boulevard Initiative, which I think most of you, hopefully all of you, are familiar with. And so in 2006, 19 communities and more agencies got together, basically from Daly City to San Jose, and looked at El Camino Real and said, this is a commercial strip. I think we can do much better than this, and we need to work together, 19 plus communities and many more agencies, to transform El Camino Real from a commercial strip to a vibrant mixed-use boulevard with housing, and to potentially in the future look at bus rapid transit, potentially then leading to light rail at some point in the future, but as an interim step looking at bus rapid transit. But in any case, looking at greening El Camino Real, bringing housing units to El Camino Real, mixing land uses, again, going back to the tenets of IMCL and true urbanism I described earlier. Really creating opportunities for people to live, work, shop, play, go to school in close proximity, using transit, being able to walk, being able to ride a bike. So an influence, again, in terms of corridors of the TCP, obviously San Mateo Avenue is our key corridor, but also El Camino Real, elements of that, Huntington Avenue, and San Bruno Avenue. So a strong influence in terms of the vision of the TCP was certainly the Grand Boulevard Initiative, GBI. And then, of course, in 2009, the city of San Bruno completed its general plan update. And the San Bruno general plan not only supports the GBI, the Grand Boulevard Initiative, but it identifies the downtown as the central business district and a vision for that central business district that would be, again, mixed use, transit accessible, bicycle friendly, places to gather, etc. So what's the context? We've got this transit corridors plan that was adopted in 2013, grade separation and Caltrain station opening up in 2014. We're moving forward to create this mixed-use environment, again, inclusive of all. Inclusive. Socially, economically, ethnically inclusive and diverse. In 2007, 2009, during that time frame, we went through the Great Recession. We've emerged from the Great Recession, and the San Francisco Bay Area has taken off. There's been a tremendous economic surge coming out of the Great Recession in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we have many, many businesses expanding, creating many, many jobs. We're not creating that many housing units, and that's an issue for us in terms of our region and our community. In San Mateo County, for example, to give a sense of what's going on in terms of jobs housing balance, between 2012 and 2015 in San Mateo County, 72,800 jobs were created, but only 3,844 new housing units. The idea with the TCP is that we are looking at a mixed-use environment. We are looking at the opportunity to create up to 1,610 new housing units in the TCP. What's the overall vision framework for the Transit Corridors Plan? As many of you know, and some of you were involved with this, there was a 17-member steering committee. There were many, many, many meetings, workshops, information gathering, public outreach, etc. And the vision that came from that work basically looks something like this. Make downtown about a 155-acre area that includes both our Caltrain and BART stations. Make downtown a day and night destination. Again, a place to live, a place to work, a place to play. Cultivate local character and distinctive identity. Let's look at what we have. Let's look at those restaurants. Let's look at our diversity. Let's look at those buildings that have architectural integrity and historical importance and retain them, bring them forward, make them a part of our future. Let's facilitate a multimodal network. We've got Caltrain, we've got BART, but what about walking, biking, Samtrans, shuttles? What can we do? In 2016, in July, this community adopted its first comprehensive walk and bike plan. Ensure economic vitality. This is something we need to look at. We're expanding. We have YouTube in our community, and they're wanting to expand. We have others wanting to come. We have strong interest in our TCP area for development and redevelopment. You see that with some of the projects coming forward, and through the rest of this year, there are going to be a number of other projects coming your way for consideration. There is a lot of interest in San Bruno at this time. Encourage sustainable mixed-use pedestrian development. I mentioned the streetscape plan. We need to look at our streetscape plan. We'll have the opportunity this next year to do that, as an example. Develop a safe and inviting pedestrian realm. Again, streetscape plan, walk and bike plan, both are helping us do that, providing us guidance. And with those documents, as they're adopted, they provide a base for our community to go out and apply for grant funds based on those approved documents, because we can demonstrate to those providing the funds that as a community, we've gone out, we've researched, we have a plan. We have projects, proposed projects, that set us up for grant applications. That's important. Develop a safe and inviting pedestrian realm. I kind of referred to that already. Design an attractive and vibrant transit village. Again, one of only 4 communities with both Caltrain and BART. We also have Samtrans. Again, we're a train-based community, streetcar-based. We're a corridor community. We have a long history of being a corridor rail community. Actually, given the sense of history we have here in terms of streetcars and trains, the orientation of our streets and our neighborhoods adjacent to the, I'll call it Caltrain corridor at this point, is one that really creates an opportunity for walkability. We have small blocks. We have a grid network. We have the opportunity to create a good street network for walking and biking. The TCP, in terms of full build-out, again, this takes time. This does not happen overnight. We have a detailed implementation plan in the TCP. This will take many, many years, and it's important that we stay committed, that we support the vision, we continue to do the implementation components to realize the full vision. But what does the full vision look like in terms of development opportunities? I mentioned mixed use. I mentioned that in the TCP area, about 1,610 units. You see that in this overall schedule here. We're looking at adding maybe 147,000 square feet or so of retail, a lot of office, over 900,000 square feet of office, and maybe 190 hotel rooms. Why so much office? And the reason for that, and again, assuming that many of you know this, within the TCP area, we have 5 character areas. One of those character areas is the station area, the area directly across from the Caltrain station. In that area, because of the airport and airport noise concerns, we cannot put housing in that area. We can put ground floor retail, commercial, across from the Caltrain station. We can put parking. But in that area, theoretically, the TCP would allow, with Measure N, the passing of Measure N, would allow up to 7 stories, subject to any adjustments by FAA. So in terms of what could go there, office is the use that could go there. And that's why you see that large number there in terms of net new development TCP across from office. A lot of that office is associated with that property and that area. I think the good news in terms of that is that it's directly across from the Caltrain station. So there's an opportunity, again, to link employment directly with transit, both Caltrain and nearby BART. As the City Council, the Planning Commission, and the community worked with developing the development standards and design guidelines to support future development, as I just addressed in the TCP area. Obviously, we have a number of low-density, single and 2-story homes nearby. And the concern of our City Council, our Commission, our community was this compact, somewhat higher, mixed-use environment with access to transit, all the things we've been talking about, all makes good sense, makes great sense. But what about the existing property owners that live nearby in low-density residential neighborhoods? What about them? What can we do to consider and protect their interest? So as part of the Transit Corridors Plan and also as a part of Measure N, as you recall, as Measure N in 2014 was considered by this community. The council looked at this, and the commission as well, and adopted what we refer to as mixed-use residential transition measures. And essentially, these are measures, and I'll review them. You're familiar with many of them. You work with many of them in terms of the review of your projects. A key one is that within the TCP area, when you're proposing a project that's adjacent to a low-density residential area, before you can even submit an application, you need to go before the Architecture Review Committee, your subcommittee, and present your proposed project for an early review, a pre-submittal review to share with people in your neighborhood at a publicly noticed meeting before the Architecture Review Committee, what you have in mind. And as part of that review, aspects are considered and feedback given regarding such things as the massing of a project, the visual impacts, and there are requirements for setbacks and stepbacks. And so there's an opportunity for the developer and the developer's representatives to not only meet with a subcommittee of your membership, of your body, but also at a noticed meeting with property owners nearby so that they can see what's being considered, what's being proposed. They can provide early feedback. And the idea is that then the developer, the representatives, will take that feedback and information and use that to actually develop their application, their formal application, and submit that to the city for review, for processing. And then they go through the normal process of, again, initial staff review, and then public meetings and hearings that are noticed. And those would be before the Architecture Review Committee, the Planning Commission, and typically, given the project's size, the City Council as well. So let's look ahead. We've got the Caltrain station in place, a cornerstone to redeveloping and developing our downtown. We followed up with the Transit Corridors Plan. The Transit Corridors Plan provides in detail a vision of this community. And now we're at a point of moving forward with implementing the TCP. So we're in the implementation action plan stage. As you know, again, at the back of the TCP document, there's a very detailed implementation action plan. The TCP itself called for looking at increasing building heights and looking really at, I'll refer to them as market incentives. The city doesn't own these properties. Many of these properties, as we all know, many of these properties had deferred maintenance, some of them obsolete and vacant for extended periods of time, vandalized. And so in terms of putting together the TCP, aspects of the TCP provide really private market financial incentives so that the city can work with private property owners to realize the vision of the TCP. Amending Ordinance 1284 in 2014, after the adoption of the TCP in 2013, was important and strategic. And important in these ways. Ordinance 1284 was adopted in 1977. Ordinance 1284 restricted building height in our community to 3 stories or 50 feet. Ordinance 1284 prohibited above-ground parking garages. Ordinance 1284 also limited residential densities to the densities that were in place on residentially zoned properties to what they were in 1974. There are probably a lot of reasons why, to some extent, I'll say San Bruno was passed over by developers, property owners interested in redeveloping their properties from a financial standpoint. Ordinance 1284 was amended for the TCP area, the 155-acre area, in 2014. It only needed a majority vote. It was passed by 67% of the voters that voted for that measure. I think it was communicated clearly and accepted by the community that our downtown area has tremendous potential, but there are some limiting factors that need to be addressed, and 1284 has had some limiting factors to seeing the full vision of the TCP. And so by passing Measure N in 2014, the residential densities could be increased so that the 1,610 residential units I talked about as a goal in the TCP could be realized, that there could be above-ground parking garages, but that those above-ground parking garages, as described in the TCP and the design guidelines with images, would need to be wrapped with other development, commercial development, would need to be attractively designed and of high-quality materials, and that the building heights were distributed throughout the TCP area. So, for example, in the downtown, where we wanted a more traditional downtown feel, a lower building height was approved with Measure N, allowing development in the TCP area on San Mateo Avenue in the CBD, the downtown, to go up to 55 feet or 4 stories, but allowing building heights on El Camino Real within the TCP area to go up to 5 stories and 70 feet. These are maximums. And again, there are design guidelines and development standards that require review at public meetings and require articulation and high-quality building materials. On San Bruno Avenue, the building height is 5 stories and up to 65 feet in height, and then only in the TCP transit station area, better said, across from the Caltrain station, is there a maximum building height of 7 stories, only in that one area. So amending Ordinance 1284 has provided a market incentive that we're seeing is having an impact with new projects in our downtown, so that it's helping to move projects from properties that had obsolete buildings, vacant and obsolete buildings, to seeing a number of those buildings come down and new buildings going up or going before the Planning Commission for consideration for approval. We've also been working on infrastructure in our downtown. We're just finishing up putting in on San Mateo Avenue new water and wastewater lines, trunk lines, and extensions, service connections to the properties in downtown. These lines were old, they were failing, we had numerous leaks, and with the new infrastructure that's going in downtown, it not only replaces old and obsolete infrastructure, it also provides for the capacity to allow for the new development that we're expecting in our TCP area. We're also in the process of preparing a comprehensive downtown parking management plan. We fully understand that as we move forward and develop and redevelop this area, compact in form, transit accessible, and the intent really is to move people from single occupancy vehicles in this area to transit, to walking, to biking, having shops close to where people live, having people live close to transit and employment. But nevertheless, as we look forward and realize a need to better manage the parking supply we have today, we have about 1,700 parking spaces in our downtown area, on the street and in our parking lots, approximately 1,700 parking spaces. At this time, we don't charge for parking. We can look at ways to better manage our parking in terms of time limits, in terms of making sure or trying to make sure that parking is convenient to shops for patrons. The community will be in the future looking at ways to better manage these 1,700 parking spaces, time limits, pay for park, etc., a variety of measures to better manage the supply we have today. In addition, we will need to look at increasing our supply of parking in our downtown, and the comprehensive parking management plan will do that. We've had a number of public meetings on that plan, and I expect by the end of this year that we will have a formal report to the City Council for consideration in terms of how to manage, for consideration of Council, our existing supply, and how do we go forward with phased development. Again, the build-out numbers I gave you earlier, that doesn't happen overnight. That's over a long period of time. But as we develop out, how do we manage our parking and provide more supply as needed? I mentioned earlier a streetscape plan. We've got the plaza going in that's on the screen. It's under construction now. That was the site of the vacant El Camino Cinema building and 3 other vacant buildings. We have the plaza going up now, 83 apartments above about 7,000 square feet of ground floor commercial retail. There'll be another project brought to the Planning Commission in the near future for a similar mixed-use project, not this large, but similar, where the former First National Bank building was across from the Caltrain station. At this time, we're looking at about 7,700 square feet of ground floor commercial and about 62 residential units above. So you can kind of imagine that we've got the Caltrain station, and potentially, if the other project is approved and constructed, we have bookends at the south end and I'll say north end of San Mateo Avenue of new mixed-use projects consistent with the vision of the TCP. And then the idea really is to come up with a streetscape plan for that entire segment. Taylor, El Camino, San Mateo Avenue, all the way north to San Bruno Avenue, to look at pavement treatments, look at furnishings, look at light standards, landscaping, green landscaping, to really create a more vibrant public space. Again, going back to the IMCL principles of really creating places for people to meet, to gather, to have social interaction, to create community. So we've got private investor interest in our downtown, and in the near future we'll be looking at preparing a streetscape plan to provide the platform, the environment, the public realm to support this private investment. Continuing with the implementation action plan, the idea is to create a more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly environment. I mentioned in 2016, the community adopted its first comprehensive walk and bike plan. We've installed a small number, but a start, of bicycle racks in our community. Based on the walk and bike plan, we've obtained grant funding for our first protected bike lane coming from Centennial Way, coming south to San Bruno Avenue. So the objective is to create this more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly environment. Again, I mentioned that we've adopted with the TCP and also Measure N, the mixed-use residential transition measures. You implement those as part of your work as Architecture Review Committee members and Planning Commission members. You're doing the initial review to ensure that we look at massing and articulation and the setbacks and stepbacks, so that as we realize this vision, we're also sensitive to the nearby low-density residential development. We're in the process of updating our zoning code. We have the transit corridors plan, but we have a zoning code that hasn't been comprehensively updated since 1982. The transit corridors plan, as I mentioned, adopted in 2013, the general plan in 2009. It's important, in fact, we're mandated at this point by the state to focus on our zoning code, update it to make sure it's internally consistent with our general plan and our transit corridors plan. I mentioned this idea of being inclusive, and inclusive in all ways, economically, socially, ethnically. That's extremely important. Housing affordability in the region is a huge concern, and what are we doing? What are we doing here in San Bruno in terms of addressing housing affordability and trying, in this environment, a very, very challenging environment, to create opportunities for people for housing and affordable housing. The city has an inclusionary housing requirement for sale housing that is in place, that is in our municipal code. So if a for sale, whether condominium or single-family detached home or units are being proposed, there's a requirement in our code that 15% of those units be affordable, and that the breakdown is basically 9% would be moderate, 6% of those would be for low-income households. So that's a requirement. Toward the end of this past year, 2017, the state legislature passed a number of housing laws and sent them on to the governor for approval. And you've heard about, we've discussed a housing package bundle of about 15 bills. The governor did sign those bills, and there is one bill, AB 1505, that allows communities to go forward and pass a local ordinance to require inclusionary housing for rental projects. We used to have, in fact, we have that in our municipal code today, but it was set aside by a court action here in our state, referred to as the Palmer decision, Palmer versus the city of San Jose in 2009. And so we had not been allowed to require that affordable units be a part of rental housing projects. And there was a concern that that requirement for rental housing was a form of rent control, so that was nullified. AB 1505 allows our community to bring that requirement back, and we'll be looking at doing that. We've done a number of things, though. We passed the TCP, as I mentioned, with the passing of Measure N. That allows us to increase the residential densities within our TCP area. We also, about a year and a half ago, our city council, you reviewed this, you recommended approval, the council adopted it, affordable housing impact fees. So we do collect affordable housing impact fees on new development, rental housing, and commercial development. So we do collect affordable housing impact fees. In recent years, we've passed a number of different ordinances allowing for transitional housing in our community, density bonus allowances when developers provide affordable housing units, they can get density bonuses, build more units on their property. So the city of San Bruno has done a number of things to promote the construction and preservation of affordable housing within our community, and we'll be doing more work in this area in the future. So the vision, kind of going back to this vision, the theme of the conference was healthy 10-minute neighborhoods. Our transit corridors plan, with a foundation of the Caltrain station and grade separation, our vision, our TCP vision, is to look at our transit corridors plan area, our 155-acre area, our downtown. And our vision is to create a revitalized, transit-accessible, mixed-use, walkable, bicycle-friendly, and inclusive of all economically, socially, and culturally environment. And in keeping with the principles of IMCL that I started with tonight, that is forwarding the principles of true urbanism. Again, the idea really is to work toward facilitating community social life, facilitating contact with nature, facilitating independent mobility, moving people, not cars, and ensuring a healthy urban fabric, human scale, mixed use, providing opportunities for frequent interaction of people, creating community. So it was truly, truly my pleasure to go to the conference in Ottawa, Canada, between the 14th and the 18th, and present this paper with Rick Phillips, and really share with people from 25 other countries, 350 people, what we're doing here in San Bruno. I was very proud, and I thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Well, it was a well-done report, I must say. Congratulations. That was pretty awesome. So, we don't need to make a motion on that particular paper, though, now do we, Dave? No. So, we're going to be moving forward. Well, before I do that, does anybody have any questions in regards to the presentation that was just given? No?
Through the chair? Through the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's great to represent San Bruno so well in another country and with all, representatives from all across the world. It's nice to put San Bruno on the map, considering we're technically on the map because the airport is right here. I just have a couple of questions. Regarding the inclusionary housing, the 15% affordable housing or impact fee, I know we mentioned at the last meeting that affordable housing, to qualify now in San Bruno, we're looking at an income of $60,000 to $105,000 a year. Can this commission reject plans that come before it that wherein the developer chooses to pay the fee instead of developing needed housing?
In the case of for sale housing, the first option is inclusion as opposed to feeing out. The way our inclusionary ordinance is set up is that it indicates that we as a community are looking for including units, affordable units first. We would, or could, better said, we could consider in lieu fees or land dedication as options. We could also look at preservation of, say, other affordable housing within our community. So there are options to consider. In these cases, the applicants, the developers, prepare affordable housing plans. So our staff, when we work with the developer, we typically, I'm going to say typically, would be recommending for sale projects that they include and they meet the base requirement, 9% moderate, 6% low income, and include. There are cases, though, let's say, I'm going to give you an example perhaps, up at Skyline College, where we looked at Skyline College, where that was somewhat unique, where the college district was proposing a certain number of units, 30 in that case, units for faculty and staff, that would be affordable. And then separately, with the developer was proposing 40 residential units, and the affordable housing requirement essentially would be met with some in lieu fees that were paid as well, by the way, with the faculty and staff housing. Given the location of that project away from the downtown, away from transit facilities, away from Samtrans, BART, Caltrain, et cetera, staff supported that concept, but ultimately you're in a position of making a recommendation on the affordable housing plan to the city council. Ultimately, the affordable housing plans are approved by city council. So a developer has the right to propose something other than inclusionary, but I'll say that if a project is proposed near transit, near services, and it's for sale, typically our staff would be proposing that the units be included and that there not be a fee out option. But ultimately, it's going to be the commission to receive the staff recommendation and then forward a recommendation onto council. The city council will make the ultimate decision on the affordable housing plan.
Okay, I'm sorry if I was not clear. I'm not talking about the affordable housing plan, though. It's actually the individual developments that come to us. Can those be refused, or could they be denied by this commission? If the choice of the developer, which I understand they have a choice, but if the choice is to pay the fee in lieu of building housing?
Well, with a proposed project that qualifies, and it would be 5 residential units or more. I hope I'm understanding you correctly, but the threshold is 5 residential units or more. And with that project, there would be a companion affordable housing plan. You can recommend denial of the project. It would go on to city council. You could recommend theoretically denial. Let's say they're proposing to fee out. And I think I'm understanding you, I hope I am. Let's say they're proposing to fee out as opposed to include units, and you're opposed to that. You could, based on that, recommend denial of the project. That would then go on to city council, and city council would consider the full project, including your rationale for a recommendation of denial. The city council may or may not accept your recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know that I would or wouldn't. It would be obviously case by case, but my question really results from the number I think you gave. It was like 72,000 new jobs. In
Right.
the last housing report we were provided was 15 units that were built in the last year here.
Right.
So, and then I wanted to ask about whether San Bruno has considered at all a neighborhood preference. I know that Chief Barbieri recently made a pretty descriptive presentation to the city council recently, stating that a number of the homeless population in downtown San Mateo Avenue are actually residents of San Bruno or were residents of San Bruno. Given that we are expecting an increase in jobs here, largely due to the YouTube development, have we started to consider that, or has the city started to look into the possibility of a neighborhood preference?
Would you describe that for me, please?
So you depending on the structure and what laws apply to that particular program, but literally you would get a preference if you come from a specific neighborhood to move in, be one of the first to move into those developments if you're from that particular community.
Understood. We have done that actually in terms of with the crossing project. So initially with the crossing project here in San Bruno, there was a preference, I'll use the word you used, for those people who live or work locally in terms of qualifying for affordable housing units. I think that's what you're saying. That can be challenging to administer over time, frankly. I know that with that project, there was some challenge doing that. Initially, it may work, but as there's turnover and trying to make sure it's equitably administered, it can be a challenge. So I'll say this. It has been used in this community in the past. It's something in the future that we would, look at, but we would want to sort out the administrative challenges of working with that kind of program.
As far as the plans go, just for my information, I'm wondering how often are the plans supposed to be updated? So the general plan was in '09, so it'll be 10 years next year. I know the zoning, we've talked about this before, is really a state mandate to be updated. But what would be, what is standard for a general plan?
It varies. It really varies widely. It's recommended that a community review its general plan every 5 years to determine if there's a need to update the general plan. Oftentimes, there are individual amendments and not necessarily a comprehensive update, but I would say it varies tremendously throughout the state of California. But the recommendation is to formally review your general plan about every 5 years to determine if there are aspects of it that need to be updated. In addition, as let's say there is a particular element of the general plan. Our general plan has 8 elements. There are 7 mandated elements, and they refer to land use, transportation, etc. Ours has 8. So sometimes there may be a state mandate, a requirement to update a particular element, the standard 7, the mandated 7, and with that there is a requirement that your general plan be internally consistent. So let's say you're mandated to update, I'll say, your transportation element. That may trigger a need, for example, to look at your land use element and do a companion amendment to make sure that overall your general plan is internally consistent. Anyway, to answer your question more directly, about every 5 years is recommended.
And then I really enjoyed that you talked about the presentation with the across cities. That was the 2006 plan, I think?
That's right.
Do the cities regularly meet to see how that's going, or how does that work?
We do. In fact, GBI, Grand Boulevard Initiative, meets on a fairly regular basis, and there are presentations by the various cities, representatives from the various cities, as to what kinds of projects they're doing. In fact, they have competitions. We won a competition a couple of years ago for our TCP, frankly. It was an honor to go and receive that. So yes, the Grand Boulevard Initiative has regular meetings. The group has regular meetings. You may want to check out their website. They actually offer quite a bit. They have an affordable housing toolkit on their website from the various award ceremonies. Typically annually they'll have an award ceremony. They show projects up and down the peninsula, again from Daly City to San Jose, where individual communities have been honored for really meeting the principles of GBI. There are about 10 principles of GBI. Again, I've mentioned some of them tonight, but again, this idea of mixed use, very similar to our TCP in ways, in terms of mixing land uses, green infrastructure, looking at opportunities to move people away from the car, but to walking, biking, transit, and
a long-term vision, I guess I'll say long-term, is the opportunity for bus rapid transit. When I was in Ottawa recently at this conference, it was kind of interesting for me to see bus rapid transit. It was throughout the city of Ottawa, and it was impressive. They're able to move a lot of people efficiently, fairly cost-effectively, although they are transitioning in Ottawa from BRT, bus rapid transit, to light rail now. So they're kind of progressing. But in any case, GBI is very much alive and well.
My last question is, you talked about the different, I guess the goals maybe for activities for downtown. And does the city have an activities committee or someone who I guess is assigned to kind of revitalize the downtown? I know a lot of cities have started having art walks on Fridays. Oakland I think says third Friday of the month. A number of smaller cities across the Bay have also done something similar. We've also seen wine strolls, farmers markets. Daly City now has Off the Grid at Ceremony Mall. What's being looked at to try to revitalize downtown, and who's responsible for that?
Yeah, well, I think at this point, looking at the streetscape plan and kind of cleaning up the downtown a little bit more is what we're focusing on right now. The Chamber of Commerce is one entity that looks at the downtown. In my role, I sit on the Chamber of Commerce board as a liaison for the city. I'm not on the board, but I'm the liaison for the city to the board. And I think that at this time, getting the infrastructure in and cleaning up the downtown a little bit more is the focus. I think there's a lot of excitement, frankly, about the plaza opening, hopefully moving forward with 111 San Bruno Avenue that I mentioned earlier this evening, and the streetscape plan. With the streetscape plan, the idea of looking at the small plaza next to West Coast Cafe, looking at Posey Plaza, and I agree 100% with you in terms of programming of activities. I think that, again, mentioned in the presentation tonight, this idea of looking at Posey Plaza and trying to activate that space, not only with, say, small storefronts and things like that, but programmed activities. Commissioner Mason, as you're mentioning, would be very helpful too, to just bring people downtown. I go downtown 3 or 4 times a week, and I think we've talked about that, and I enjoy it a lot. And I go in the evening sometimes, and I am completely impressed with how many people are in our downtown in the evenings using our restaurants, our various, we have a number of, I'll say, recreational type facilities downtown. We have martial arts of various kinds, Roomba, a variety of things. But we've got some really great restaurants, and my observation is that they're well used and should be well used. They're good.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you, commissioners, for indulging me.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. No, I'm sorry, Drew, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said thank you, and thank you, commissioners, for indulging me.
No problem. That's way better for me when you speak closer to the mic. All right, well, we will move on. I'm glad you had some good questions, and evidently they all been answered. Anybody else have any questions for staff or for city attorney while we have him sitting over there all nice and quiet? No? Okay. Well, then we're going to go to a planning commission discussion, which I guess at this time is going to be looking for what? ARC review volunteers? Do we have an ARC review?
No,
meeting
it
for
hasn't occurred yet, so we already have our members for the ARC meeting
Oh, I
selected.
must have missed a meeting then, huh?
That is
Yeah.
correct, yes. You could probably soon use the gavel, perhaps.
Really? So we can be adjourned?
It's your call.
Meeting.
Oh.
Oh, I am so sorry. Not yet. Please.
That's okay. I just wanted to thank you all for your efforts as planning commissioners. I know it's not easy and it's a challenge to live in wherever you live and have people live around you who I'm sure, come with questions and concerns, and you have to follow the rules and the laws, and I know that it can be difficult sometimes. So I appreciate all the efforts you've done and will continue to do to help San Bruno be a better place to live.
Thank you. And on that note, sorry, meeting adjourned.